Hey there, and welcome back to Queens Behind the Scenes. I'm your host, Charise Beckett, and today we're going to talk about something that so many of us know in our bones. But before we get started, I wanted to state that the opinions expressed in my podcast are my own and are shared for educational and informational purposes only. They do not reflect the views, policies, or experiences of any employer or organization or entity I have been or am affiliated with. Any similarities to real persons or workplaces are purely coincidental. And that's that. Anyway, have you ever noticed that the second you tell the truth about what is really going on, suddenly you become the problem? Not the behavior, not the bias, not the broken processes, and not the racism baked into the system. You become the issue because you opened your mouth and you named what everybody else was pretending not to see. If you've ever been punished, sidelined, labeled, or quietly managed out because you told the truth about what was happening, this episode is for you. Today, we're going to go behind the scenes of what it really means when naming the problem becomes the problem. We are going to talk about why this happens in the first place, how it shows up in your leadership and your career, and what it costs you emotionally, mentally, and physically, and then how to reclaim your voice without sacrificing your peace or your future. This is going to be a longer, kind of deeper conversation, so I'm going to invite you to really settle in. If you're at home, grab your coffee, your tea, your sparkling water, your journal. If you're in the car, just, let this wash over you and notice what hits you in your spirits. So, all right, let's get into this. So, there is this unspoken rule in a lot of organizations. You can be excellent, you can work hard, you can stay late, you can fix the broken systems, you can smile in meetings, you can volunteer for the committee, the task force, the ERG, the extra project, but do not name the harm. Do not name the racism. Do not name the bias. And I was actually watching something, I think it was a reel that somebody said, it is, especially for people, Black people specifically, because I'm Black, but people of color, I think, can all relate to this in some way, is that, for us, it is definitely when you raise a concern, it's really hard. The way we have to go to work and lead our lives and in every way, like not just work, but just like every social aspect, it is so painful because you can't talk about the harm, your lived experiences, because that triggers other people. So you can't even talk about it, right? So you do not name the inequity in pay and opportunity and access. Do not name the double standards that everybody knows are there. Like those things are your lived experiences. And then when you even notice them in other situations that may not even particularly relate to you, that's the naming the thing. Do not name the fact that certain people get grace and others get surveillance, or don't name the fact that some people can fail up while others have to be perfect just to be seen as even average, even when they're excellent. Because the minute you call it what it is, now you're making people uncomfortable. And that has been the experience for so many people of color, so many Black people, and especially women leaders. And in many environments, comfort is more protected than truth. People would rather just stay comfortable than face the truth, fix the problems, and get comfortable around finding solutions. So I want you to sit with that. That is the reality for some people and in some environments. There are workplaces and leadership teams, even families, where the highest value is not honesty, it's not accountability, and it's not growth. It's just comfort, mediocrity, and that's it. So comfort for the people who already hold power, right? They don't want to be uncomfortable. Comfort for the people who benefit from the ways things have been. If people are benefiting from, no matter how much they say they want to fix it, that's the other part. No matter how much people say they want to fix something, if they benefit from that system, it is going to be very hard for them to adjust to things being very differently. Comfort for the person whose feelings will be hurt if you say that behavior is hurting other people, or this structure is inequitable or unfair. So when you tell the truth, you are not just making the comment, you're disrupting like an ecosystem that has grown very attached to its own story. And here's why naming the problem is so threatening. It forces people and systems to see themselves, right? It disrupts like the story that they are fair and inclusive and progressive and enlightened, or whatever nice words are written on the website and in their mission and the lobby wall, right? That disrupts if you name it, that disrupts that very whatever that narrative is that they've created, even though it might not even match reality. It puts a bright, unforgiving spotlight on the gap between the brand and the behavior. When the brand is something and the behavior does not match, and you call that out, that is very uncomfortable for people. And they either acknowledge the truth, some places and some people are really built for growth. They acknowledge the truth, they sit with the discomfort, and they start the messy work of changing things. Or in most systems, and what they do, they turn down the lights, they move the spotlight away, and they make the person holding the flashlight the damn problem. It is much easier to say you're the problem than to say our system is messed up, we're the problem, and we need to address it. It is much easier to label you as the aggressor, negative, not a culture fit. I can't stand that. I don't want to work for an organization. I don't think anybody does. You want me to be a culture fit. I want to be a cultural add and add something to the culture. Or you're the difficult, to work with. It's easy. It's easier to label you than to admit that certain people are benefiting from a structure that harms other people. It is a hard place for organizations and people to get to. So the system protects itself. It neutralizes the truth teller instead of fixing the truth that the truth teller named, right? Sometimes that looks loud and obvious. They get written up for their tone, or they get excluded from key meetings, or their role gets restructured in some suspicious, messy, weird, slippery way. But a lot of times it is quiet. You stop getting invited to informal conversations. Your ideas are suddenly not aligned with the strategy, even when they don't even have no damn strategy. Opportunities float right past you to land with someone who is more comfortable in that system. And if you're listening and you're nodding your head right now, I want you to know you are not crazy. You are not overly sensitive, and you are not imagining it. Do not let anyone gaslight you into imagining it. There are entire structures built to make you doubt yourself so that you stop speaking up. And I want to give you a moment to check in with yourself. If you can mentally scan your career, or even your life, and remember a time you told the truth and it cost you, a moment you pushed back and suddenly the air shifted, or a conversation where you walked away thinking, how did I end up on trial when I was the one naming the issue that truly exists? You are not alone. I believe a lot of people, based on the stories I hear, my clients, colleagues, you're not alone. And so most of us did not learn this at 40, right? We learned it as kids and as teenagers. You question something in school and you're told you're being disruptive. You point out something's unfair and suddenly you're the problem child. You ask, why are things like this? And you get labeled as having an attitude, even in homes. I mean, I know in Black homes, you question things. It's because I said so. I mean, literally, we do learn that because the way we are brought up to respect, especially adults and older people, stay in a child's place, don't question things. So in your family, you may have been the one who saw the dynamics and tried to say it out loud, and that didn't go well, of course. So maybe someone told you, we don't talk about that, or stay out of grown folks' business, stop stirring the pot. Why are you always sensitive? So what do we learn? We learn early that truth has a cost. And so inherently, you start to build up your nervous system is trying to prepare you, because if truth has a cost, you're already sitting on ready whenever you're trying to tell the truth about something. But also you're trying to do a good job. And it just is well, if you want me to do a good job and you want me, you hired me for change or whatever the reason, or I'm in the room and I notice something because I'm a damn adult and I can call out what I see because my ass ain't blind. I think that is where people, that is where we have a breakdown, right? And we learn this, and we learn that, you read the room before you read others. You learn to scan for other people's comfort before you scan for your own truth. We learn to speak in softer tones, use different words, tuck in the parts of us that are too sharp or too honest, and we become experts in translation. We take something that is crystal clear in our spirit and we water it down so it goes down easier for other people. And fast forward, now you're in the boardroom, or you're leading a team, or you're the only one in a meeting, and you see the dynamic clearly. You know what's happening. You know it. You've seen it. You stay in a child's place. You've seen it. You see who's getting credit and who's doing the labor. You see who gets to be human, who has to be perfect. You see who can show up messy and who is not allowed to even have a bad day. And instead of saying this is biased or this is inequitable, you hear yourself saying things like, I just have a small concern. Maybe I'm overthinking this, but, or not to be negative. However, I see, you wrap your truth in bubble wrap so that so it doesn't land wrong. And so you say, oh, I did not mean it like that. Never mind. That's not an accident. That's conditioning. That's our nervous system conditioning. We say we're in fight or flight sometimes, and we have prepared for this our whole life just by being conditioned to what? Stay in a child's place. You learned that telling the truth had consequences. You learned that being the one who names the pattern can cost you your peace, your promotion, shit, sometimes your paycheck. So you shrink, you water it down, you soften the truth so much that it barely even has a pulse. And then you go home and your body feels the weight of everything you did not say. I am the queen. I used to be, not no more. I used to be the queen of, I should have said it. I wish I would have said, and that used to leave, the tension in my chest. I don't know about you, the tightness in the jaw, the headache that shows up on Sunday nights, the tears that come out in the shower or in your car, or in the parking lot before you walk into the damn building. You are not weak. You are not dramatic. You are a human being trying to process what it means to live inside a system that asks you to abandon yourself to belong. And belonging, as I've talked about, is a part of the hierarchy of needs. People want to belong. And systems understand that. Psychologically, they understand that people want to belong. So they know that you are going to probably, in most cases, abandon who you are to belong. But let me give you a reflection prompt. If you're not driving and you have a journal, you can jot this down later. The questions are, when in your life did you first learn that the truth had consequences? And think about that. I know for me, it was like a younger self of standing in a child's place, not questioning adults. And then whose comfort were you trained to protect, right? And then what parts of you did you start hiding so that other people would not feel confronted? You don't have to answer that out loud, but just notice what comes up, and I would revisit that later. I do want to pause here for a second because the topic is exactly why I did create my upcoming masterclass. If you're listening to this in real time, on December 11th at 6 p.m., I'm hosting a live poise masterclass called Leading Without Losing Yourself, How to Build a Career that Honors Your Health and Your Ambition. This masterclass is for women who are tired of feeling like they have to choose between their well-being and their work. And it's for the leaders who are saying, I can't keep abandoning myself just to survive these environments. We are going to talk about how to lead with integrity without burning out, and how to protect your energy while still being effective, and how to decide when to speak, when to document, and when to plan your exit, and how to walk into 2026 with clarity, confidence, and poise. If you're feeling this episode in your chest right now, the masterclass is going to give you the frameworks, the language, and the strategy to match what your spirit already knows. You can register at bit.ly/getpoise in2026. Again, this is bit.ly/getpoise in2026. All right, let's get back into this conversation. So let's talk about the labels, because the moment you start naming patterns, you will meet the label. You ask questions, you push back on a narrative that doesn't match the data. You say, actually, this decision is impacting certain groups more than others. You point out that the same behavior is treated differently depending on who is doing it. And suddenly you are hard to manage, not a team player, too intense, you're negative, emotional, always focused on the negative, too sensitive, always making everything about race and gender. I hate that. These labels are not random, though. They are tools. They are tools you use to discredit your perspective. So the systems do not have to change. They are used to make other people skeptical of you before you even walk in the room. You can feel it how people start responding, right? You ask questions and folks get quiet, or they all look at each other on the Zoom. You name something in a meeting and you get the follow-up email about your tone. You bring data and context and say that they say you're overcomplicating things or being too academic, too academic, or based too much in theory, or too in the weeds. All of these like catchphrases where half the time the people saying it don't even know what the hell they talking about. Let me say this clearly. You're being precise. You are not the problem. You are having range, and your clarity is not the problem. You seeing what other people refuse to see is not the damn problem. The problem is that clarity exposes. It does. The problem is that your consciousness does not match the story they are telling. Sometimes you will even see this play out in real time. You say something in a meeting and it's brushed off. 20 minutes later, someone with more privilege says the same thing with different words, and suddenly it's the greatest damn idea they ever heard in their fucking life, right? Or you call out a double standard and they act like you are imagining things, but 3 months later, somebody is quietly investigating the exact thing that you named months ago. So yes, naming the problem can make people treat you like you're the problem. That is real. You are not. What I want you to hear is that you do not have to internalize these labels. They are not about you. They are about other people. You can see them as just data. You can see them as information about where you are and who you're dealing with. When someone is more offended by your truth than they are about the harm you are naming, you have just learned everything you need to know about their priorities. Period. And so let me give you a simple reframe you can use. Instead of thinking, they don't like me, my honesty is incompatible with their denial. Those are two very different realities, right? And so one attacks your worth, but the other describes the system. And that's different. And so now let's talk about this through a leadership lens. Because a lot of you that are listening are not just employees, you're leaders, your executives, your founders, your business owners, your people managing other people, and people setting culture, whether they admit it or not. In leadership, the dynamic can feel even more intense because you're expected to manage up, manage down, and still be the one who absorbs the impact of the decisions you did not make. So you see pay inequities and you're told that there's no budget. You see patterns in who gets promoted and who gets recycled in the same role, right? You see that certain leaders can behave badly with no consequences while others are watched like a hawk for the smallest misstep. You sit in meetings where people use words like culture, values, equity, inclusion. But when it comes time to make a hard call that actually reflects those words, everything gets quiet. And the moment you raise it, here comes the gaslighting. I do not think it's that serious. That's like the minimization of it. I've never heard that feedback before. We don't want to create a negative narrative. I mean, how dare you create a negative narrative? But that's what the hell y'all are doing is negative shit. Let us stay focused on the positive, or maybe the timing is not right to bring that up. I want to speak especially to my executive queens who are in roles that look shiny on paper, but behind the scenes, you feel like you are constantly negotiating your own humanity. You might look very successful from the outside. People see the title, the salary, the LinkedIn, the access, the events. But behind the scenes, you are exhausted from being the one who sees everything, feels everything, absorbs everything, and still has to show up polished and poised. You love leadership, you love building teams, you love strategy, but you also feel suffocated by politics, the race dynamics, the gender dynamics, and the unspoken expectation that you will just absorb it with a smile. Leadership is not just about strategy and performance, unfortunately. It's not. It's about how much truth you're allowed to speak without being punished or ridiculed. And that, my friends, is not psychological safety. Now, I'm not going to ask you to expose your job, but I do want to normalize something. It is very possible to be in the highest room you have ever been in and still feel very unseen. It is very possible to have more power than you're used to and still feel very unsafe. But both can be true. And if you are in a season where you feel like you have to edit yourself to survive, I do see you. I do see you. You are not failing and you are not weak. You are trying to lead in systems that were not built with you in mind. You just are. So let me give you a couple questions you can ask yourself as a leader. And again, grab your journal or your Poise workbook, which is now on Amazon, and ask these, think about and reflect these questions later. Where am I biting my tongue because I'm scared for the consequences? Where am I telling my team to be honest, but I don't feel free to be honest myself? And when am I being asked to manage the optics instead of manage the actual issues? Those answers might be uncomfortable, but they will be very clarifying. And y'all know how I am about clarity. So here's the question. If naming the problem could get you punished or isolated or any of these things, and staying silent is hurting you, what do you do? So I want to offer a few ways to think about reclaiming your voice in a strategic way. First, we name the pattern, not the person. Like I find that has been really helpful for me because naming the pattern is the important part. I mean, people are important too, obviously, but it can feel like an attack. So instead of saying you are racist or you are biased, which people will immediately be defensive about, you can say, what I'm noticing in this is a pattern where certain perspectives are consistently dismissed. That's the system. Or the impact of the decision appears to fall disproportionately on these groups. Or I'm seeing a trend in who gets access to opportunities and who does not. You are still telling the truth, but you are framing it as a system issue, not just a personality issue. I say stay away from the personality issue. Systems are harder to hide from once they're named, right? It's kind of like saying the water is dirty instead of arguing about which fish is the worst, right? It truly is. You're shifting the conversation to the container instead of just the individual swimming in it, right? The other thing is document everything. Your voice is powerful, but documentation is also protection. When you see something, write it down. When you say something, follow it up with an email. And when you're given strange feedback, capture what was said, when and who else was there, and document it. Documentation is not about living in fear. It's just about living in the reality of things. We can't keep telling Black women and marginalized leaders to just trust the process when the process was not designed for them. We can't continue to tell that lie. It's just not true. Documentation does also help you see patterns more clearly. It also helps if you ever need to escalate or protect yourself in any way. And it helps you with your own gaslighting. I know that's what I do before I journal, because it helps me with my own gaslighting when I start to wonder, did I imagine that? Or whatever, I can go back and see with my own receipts. And the other thing is choose your moments with intention, not fear. There's a difference between being silent and being strategic. You're not required to fight every battle in real time. You are not required to sacrifice your mental health for an audience that is not ready to hear you. Sometimes the strategy is observe it, collect the data, build your network, design your exit plan, and then choose the moment where your truth will have the most impact and the least harm to your survival. And sometimes the strategy is to say, I'm not going to fight for a seat at the table that keeps showing me that I am not welcome here. Both paths are valid. One is choosing when to speak. The other is choosing where you want to spend your energy. And what I do want for you is to stay in situations where your soul is, I do not want you to stay in situations where your soul is slowly eroding just because someone told you that leaving means you failed. Sometimes leaving is the most powerful truth you can speak, honestly. Build safe spaces for your full voice. So that's the other thing. You cannot always be your full self in every room. And that is one thing that this whole bring your authentic self. And I talk a lot about authenticity, and I'm going to get into that, but you cannot always be your full self in every room. And it's just the real truth. But you need at least one space where you do have to, you don't have to translate or shrink. And that may be a therapist, a coach, a sister circle, a mastermind, a text thread with women who get it, a journal where you can say exactly what you feel. Those spaces do not fix the system, but they do keep you from losing yourself while you navigate it. And why I say that every space does not, deserve your authenticity. My assessment of all of that situation is that some places don't deserve your authentic self. And especially if it's not a safe place or safe space or safe people. I don't believe this. If I am not in a safe place with safe people, you don't deserve to get all of me. Okay? You don't deserve to get my emotional response. You don't deserve to get me. Right? You don't deserve to I'm coming in here with the data and the facts. I'm coming to work and I'm going my ass on home. I don't believe that when people say authenticity, they're not thinking about safety. And I will tell you, every space does not deserve all of your authentic self. I'm not saying don't be authentic. I'm saying that all of you in unsafe spaces is dangerous. Also, the last of my 5 pieces of wisdom are remember poise. This is literally why I built poise. And let me walk through it slowly. So precision, get clear on what is actually happening, not just how you feel. Your feelings are valid, but naming the patterns with data give you power. Optimization, protect your energy and capacity. You're a whole person, a whole ass person, not just a title Where do you need to pull your energy back, right? Where do you need to say, you know what? This space does not deserve my energy. Influence. Use your influence where it matters with people who are capable of change. Do not waste your brilliance begging brick walls to become doors. I love that saying. Do not waste your brilliance begging brick walls to become doors. Don't. Strategy. Do not just react in the moment. Be strategic. Choose the path that serves your long-term vision, your health, and your money. And then lastly, endurance. This is not a one-day battle. It's the long game, right? Your goal is not to be a martyr. Your goal is to be well and be free. So if you want, you can write that down and literally ask yourself, where do I need more precision right now? Where do I need to optimize my energy? Who actually listens when I speak? That is where my influence goes. What is my strategy for the next 6 to 12 months? And what practices help me endure without becoming numb? So moving into one of our last segments, I want to be honest, there is grief that comes with all of this. And I've said it. Even for myself, I noticed these changes in the way that I am responding when there is a circumstance where I know that my silence is best because it's my strategy, and grief has come for that. A grief for the younger you who thought if you just worked hard and did everything right, the system would treat you fairly and you could show up authentically and you could just be yourself and all of those things. There's going to be grief for the moments where you silenced yourself to keep a job, right? Like there are going to be those moments. There is grief for the friendships and relationships you lost when people decided that your truth was too much. There's grief for the version of you that did not yet know how political all of this really was. And that is something that I sit with a lot. So if you feel tired, that makes sense. If you feel numb, that also makes sense. If you find yourself second guessing everything you say, that makes sense too. You have been carrying the weight of other people's comfort for a really long time. There's also this anger at the double standard. That is anger at being punished for being right too early, anger at watching people who harmed you still be rewarded. I want you to know that your anger is not something to be ashamed of. It's information though. Anger is information. It is telling you something in your world is out of alignment. And here's the part I want you to hold on to. Your ability to name what is happening is not a flaw. It is a gift. It is discernment. It is a gift. Your clarity is not a liability. It is a compass. Your voice is not dangerous. It is medicine for the people who are ready to hear it. The goal is not to convince everyone. The goal is to live a life where you are not consistently abandoning yourself. You deserve rooms where your truth is welcome, not weaponized. You deserve leaders who can sit with discomfort without making you the villain. And you deserve to lead in spaces that do not require you to fracture yourself to be accepted. And if you are not there yet, know that you are allowed to build a path that takes you there. I want to invite you into a quick visualization. If you're driving, keep your eyes on the road, keep them open, but you can still listen. If you are at home and you feel safe, and just gently close your eyes. I want you to imagine the most honest version of you. The you who does not shrink, who does not code switch, who does not water down her brilliance. The you who tells the truth with love and with power. See her sitting at a table that actually deserves her. Notice how she holds her shoulders. Do you notice her posture, her tone, her face? Notice how relaxed her body is when she does not have to perform safety for everyone else. Now imagine that woman being you walking into 2026. What changes? Who is around her? What kind of room is she in? What kind of work is she doing? How does she move when she's no longer treating herself like the problem? You might not be that woman in full yet, but she is not a fantasy. She is a direction. I want to support by building that version of you in real life. I am inviting you again to join me on December 11th at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for my live masterclass, Leading Without Losing Yourself, How to Build a Career That Honors Your Health and Ambition. We are going deeper into this exact tension, being honest and strategic, being ambitious and well, and being visible without being consumed. You can grab your spot at bit.ly/getpoise in 2026. If anything in this episode resonated, that room is literally for you. All right, Queen, I want to start landing this plane. I know I've been talking a lot, but if this episode spoke to you, if you find yourself replaying moments from your own career, your own life, I want you to do two things. First, give yourself that grace. We got to give ourselves grace. You did what you needed, right? To do this, to survive in these rooms you were in. You did the best you could with the information and support you had at the time. You did not have to beat up on a past version of yourself. You don't have to do that. Don't beat up on yourself you're just trying to stay afloat. Second, decide what this next season looks like. Is it a season of voice? Is it a season of strategy? Is it a season of healing? Is it a season of exit and reinvention? Whatever it is, I want you to walk into it with intention and not shame. And I would love to support you more deeply in that, not only through this podcast, but through the Poise work, through the masterclass, through the tools we're building for women who are tired of choosing between their health and their ambition. So let me remind you one more time, December 11th at 6 p.m. Eastern, we are hosting the masterclass, and I would be happy to have you. You can grab your spot at bit.ly/getpoise in 2026. If this episode resonated, the room's for you again. Thank you for spending this time with me. If you enjoyed this conversation, share it with another woman who is tired of being treated like she is the problem for telling the truth. Make sure you subscribe to Queens Behind the Scenes so you do not miss the next episode. Stay in your poise, stay anchored in your truth, and remember, your voice is not the problem. I will see you next time.